Here.
Jack Edgemon, Donald Clarke,
Here.
Dr. Oxer, Gary Freeman,
Here.
Chris Duncan,
Here.
Alex Ramos.
Here. Thank you all for being here tonight. As we move towards the consent agenda, I'll wait to entertain a motion.
I'll motion to accept it.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Eva, please call the roll.
Gary Freeman,
Yes.
Donald Clarke,
Yes.
Dustin Woods,
Yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
Alex Ramos.
Yes.
All right, at this point, let me turn it over to Town Planner Dana Rydell to begin tonight's conversation.
Good evening, and thank you very much. Yes, this is Dana Riddell, the town planner for the record. And our first item on the agenda tonight, item 2A, is a public hearing of the quasi-judicial nature. So we'll go ahead and get the agent and myself sworn in, and anyone that has expert testimony to offer. And Vlad is here as well, so all three of us will stand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Thank you. At this time, there have been no letters received in favor or in objection for the request, and I will go down the line and ask if there's been any ex parte communication between the board members and anyone in the public regarding this case, starting with Mr. Duncan.
No.
Thank you.
None.
Thank you.
I did have a conversation with the engineer, just briefly, but it wasn't anything in depth at all. It was just because I know him.
Okay, great. Just regarding the site plan itself?
Ma'am?
Just in regards to the site plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
None.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint, and I actually need to start with an apology because there was an oversight on my part. It turns out that as part of the package, and I just discovered this within the last couple hours, did not contain the ordinance that I usually like to include as part of the package, as well as the site plan. But I do believe that the staff report contained enough information that if you feel comfortable, you may vote today. If you do not feel comfortable with the information you have on hand or that you received previously, we can go ahead and table the hearing, and it will not cause any delays to the final approval date. We can run the hearings out of order like we've done before in the past if necessary. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. But this is in regards to Ordinance 2025-01. This is hearing number LPTC.25.001RZ. The owner of the property is the Lake Placid Church of the Nazarene. The agent is Polston Engineering under the care of Marvin Wolf and Vlad, who I will not dare to try to butcher his last name if I can help it. The address is 512 West Interlake Boulevard. It's at the intersection of Tangerine and Interlake, just on the north side of the Lake Placid High School. The applicant is requesting a rezoning for the subject property from Limited Commercial District C2 to Limited Commercial Plan Development District C2 PD to allow for a church and church uses, and adding section 160-22 of the Code of the Town of Lake Placid entitled Lake Placid Church of the Nazarene Plan Development Ordinance. On the screen, it looks like my future land use map didn't fully load, so you don't see the colors, but the future land use designations are there on top of the properties. And we'll go over the surrounding designations in just a little bit. You can see an aerial image of the property. You can see that there's a sidewalk on the outside of the property. And then zoning, it's just a slight change. It goes from C2 to C2 PD, so the brown is just a little bit darker is what we're indicating there. In terms of intensity, right now in the C2 district, churches are allowed to have up to 50% maximum lot coverage, and the applicant has not requested any change to the maximum lot coverage. So they're willing to stand by the 50% requirement, which means there's no request and change in intensity. And the actual construction that they're proposing comes in under that 50%. So here we get into our adjacent property analysis, and we can see that on the north and northeast side of the properties, even on the east, we have a future land use of residential office with zonings of C2, which is our limited commercial, and C2A, which is another form of limited commercial. To the northwest and west and southwest, we have a PD zoning and a downtown mixed-use future land use, as well as commercial general, and that particular PD is slated for some commercial uses in conjunction with some multifamily uses. So all of this ultimately to say that to the north and east, we have commercial uses. To the west and south, to the south, we have a school with agricultural zoning, and to the west, we have agricultural uses with commercial designations for future development. So short version of that is it is consistent and compatible with the surrounding area. We went ahead and requested comments from the from the various departments and agencies. There were no comments aside from the Highlands County Engineering Department. They'll be on the next slide, and the Town of Lake Placid Engineering. Most of the comments provided by the town engineer have been addressed in the latest site plan, which you all have before you. And they were more geared toward like site plan review comments that an engineer would do during the time of civil engineering, nothing that would have been substantial enough at the time of rezoning. And that's the comment that I mentioned from the Highlands County Engineering Department, where they specifically just mentioned that a permit would be required for off-site improvements. And that slide is a leftover slide. So in terms of public facilities and services analysis, the property is currently served by Central Water. So taking a step back, we can just talk about the existing conditions on the property. There is a church that exists on the property. It doesn't have any paved parking as it stands today. At some point, some years ago, they were asked to dedicate some right-of-way to the county on Tangerine. They went ahead and did that. As such, that sidewalk exists on Tangerine and Interlake. In terms of water and wastewater, the letter that they received from the town stated that wastewater isn't technically available, and I think that really just alludes to there's no pipes that run in that particular direction. I don't think that's a reflection of capacity, but at this time, any improvements that need to happen would occur with septic, and then they would go ahead and convert to central sewer as soon as that, or within 1 year of it becoming available. I had another conversation with Polston Engineering today, just going over that requirement, and they understand that if water becomes available soon, they will need to connect within 1 year. Wastewater. The property is currently served by the town of Lake Placid for waste collection, and Highlands County administers traffic concurrency and has acknowledged a traffic study will be required at the time of development, but they did not require one now at the time of rezoning. Since the zoning change is not residential in nature, further collaboration with the school board was not required at this time. And recreation and open space, there's an open space requirement, but there's no requirement for them to provide a park or anything of that nature. So they'll meet that 50% open space requirement. And as I mentioned before, section 154-18 requires multi-use paths for new developments on collector roads when possible. And it does say when possible. Sidewalks currently exist in that area, and they're not, a conversion to a multi-use path was not proposed as part of this development. So they have asked for that deviation as part of their conditions. So I know this is a lot of text. I'm going to summarize this real quick. It's mostly just reminders for me of exactly what's going on. But I do want to go over the deviations and the specific actual requests that the church is making. So we know that they're going for C2 PD zoning, which means they can have a C2 zoning but allow for certain deviations if so agreed upon by the local planning agency and the town council and the applicant themselves. So they're asking for a three-phase development. Phase 1 recognizes the existing development. Fun fact, in the town of Lake Placid, there is not a single zoning designation that allows churches outright. So that is going to be probably something I'll change in the future as I make my way through code updates. But because of that, this church was built either before zoning or on the approximate year built, maybe just finished at some point after zoning became relevant in the town of Lake Placid. So the existing conditions don't necessarily comply with all of today's standards and codes. So they're just basically saying whatever is there now, phase 1, we want to make sure that is allowed, because especially there's very few churches in town that actually received the special exception once the special exception became required. So instead of doing a special exception, they're requesting a PD to allow the actual use itself as a church. So that's phase 1, acknowledging the existing use and the existing structures. Phase 2 is where they're asking to build an addition onto the existing building, update the landscaping, and provide stormwater management. There is a time frame of 36 months on phase 2, and then on phase 3 is just a future vision in case. It's not necessarily something that they're planning on doing in the near future, but phase 3 would be an expansion of the parking area if necessary. And again, that parking is being requested over grass, but they are proposing to pave the vehicular use areas. Of course, it has to go through commercial site plan review like all other developments. We talk about the uses, and the reason why I do not oppose the request for parking over grass is because of the infrequent use of the property. And you can see under the uses portion of this ordinance that they also agreed that this would never be, none of the church uses would include thrift stores or daycares or schools, anything that require daily use or high levels of traffic. So for that reason, I do not oppose the request for parking over grass. Variances aren't allowed. This is their one opportunity to go ahead and make their request for anything that they might need. So we went ahead and also added the setback requirements, which are generally standard, but do allow for some deviations. Like they have a memory garden right now, and it's really like 6 pergolas, but it comes right up to the property line, and that's kind of a gray area. So we just wanted to make sure we got that accepted and approved as part of the zoning. Then setbacks for accessory structures on their site plan, they only have proposed a shed. There's an existing, maybe 2 sheds. It looks like they want to consolidate it into one and relocate it on the property. By commercial review standards, anything under 2,000 square foot can be exempt from the commercial review process. So that's why we went ahead with the 2,000 square foot requirement, that anything under that would meet those accessory structure requirements. The height is consistent with the C2 district of 35 feet. Again, the lot coverage is consistent with the C2 district. They're not proposing any deviation from the commercial architectural standards. For landscaping and irrigation, there are some requests for deviation. Along Inner Lake, because it's a collector road, it's required to have 10 foot of landscaping, 10 foot wide. And then our code is a little bit silent on exactly what plantings need to go in that landscaping. The applicant has proposed a width of 7.6 feet for that buffer with the same number of plantings, and they provided an idea of what the plantings, not necessarily what the plants would be, but maybe how many there would be and how they might be spaced on the site plan. So that's available for your review. And then the other deviation was the canopy tree coverage requirements. You are required by code to provide up to 50% canopy tree coverage of your vehicular use area. So if you have 5,000 square feet of vehicular use area, you need to provide 2,500 square feet of canopy tree coverage. There's trees spread measurements in code. So if you're using an oak tree, I think it's 1,946 square feet that provides of coverage. That's the largest amount of coverage provided in our code. And part of the intent of canopy tree coverage is to keep the temperatures down in town, but because they propose to park over grass because of the low intensity of their operation, where you would usually put the canopy trees is where the cars are going to park. So it didn't make sense in that regard, and that's another thing that I haven't opposed. I have no opposition to their request of no canopy tree coverage throughout the site, because they are going to keep that temperature low by not paving a lot. Invasive exotics, they've got to go. That's standard language. We don't allow them on anyone's property. The signs, they've agreed, will adhere to town code. Lighting shall be shielded to not shine toward any adjacent properties or roads. And they might have actually even included, they started showing their lights on the building. As far as I can tell, there's no lights proposed in the parking area at this time. And then it goes into more detail about the parking in phase 2 versus phase 3. So some of the parking, in order to make it fit along East Interlake, they're requesting, 10 by 18 instead of the required 10 by 20. Our code does call for oversized park. I don't want to call them oversized. They feel nice to me. The perfect size parking spaces, but in other municipalities, 9.5 by 18 is the standard. So a deviation to 10 by 18 also saw no opposition from me. The applicant is responsible for their stormwater. The other interesting thing about this particular development is, and let me also say this, the existing church, so you did have a layout included in your packet. The existing church includes the sanctuary. That is where the maximum seating capacity comes from. And for zoning purposes, that's how we configure parking requirements. And the way that parking is established in town code is that if you have 100 seats and then you have like a 10,000 square foot church, it doesn't matter how big the church is, it matters how many seats you have in the sanctuary. That's how parking is established. So what they're doing today doesn't increase the amount of parking, because the concept is that they're supposed to be able to enjoy church in one portion of the building, which would be the sanctuary, and then maybe have fellowship and do storage activities and have additional bathrooms in the other section of church. So I'm just making that point to indicate that we don't expect an increase in volume of waste or trash, but there is language in the code for how that will be determined. And we don't want to preclude them from being able to have a dumpster in the future. So what they're saying right now is that they don't need a full-blown dumpster, which is fine. Town doesn't necessarily require a dumpster if you're not putting out that much trash. But we did ask them to screen it. So you'll see there's a little fence area around the 3 cans that they have, and then they'll take them, walk them down their sidewalk, and put them toward the road when the time comes. And a loading area was not necessary for the activities that they're doing. Our code, just blanket statement, requires loading area for everything. In this case, it didn't really seem necessary. So they're using carts, and again, they're just keeping it very low intensity. In terms of water, we established that it shall be served by the town's water. We also established that the owner shall, at its expense, connect to sanitary sewer within 1 year of availability. And there again, I mention The church is an existing use with no proposed increase to maximum capacity in the main seating area. Any traffic impacts are expected to be de minimis, but we will get that traffic study from Highlands County with their seal of approval before we can move forward with anything. Curb shall not be required internally, and Marvin probably thought I was really silly because the one day I called him and I said, yeah, the town really prefers type F curb and gutter, and he's like, people are going to park there. I was trying to make people hop curbs. So thank you, Marvin, for keeping me on track there. Access management standards, they're going to use the existing access that they have. They're not proposing any new access points. Concurrency will be required before approval. And then we can go on and just take a look. This is a screenshot, so it's really not the clearest, but you get an idea, and everybody has a site plan in front of them. And for the public, as I mentioned, due to my oversight, I have a couple printed out here in case any member of the public would like to see them, or a copy of the ordinance. They're available here at the front. Feel free to walk up anytime.
Excuse me, Ms. Rydell, did you say this is a quasi-judicial public hearing?
Yes.
So we need to open for public comment as well?
Yes.
As part of the meeting? Okay.
Yep, we will have public comment. Here you're seeing the 3 phases. So on phase 3, you will see the additional parking that could potentially be proposed. And we break down in the ordinance exactly how many parking spaces would be removed to add the additional drive aisles. Of course, permitting will be required for that as well. This is the layout. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where we said there's no increase to, yes. I'm sorry? Yeah, there's no increase to the sanctuary, but part of me feels like I flipped this image. This is right?
This is correct. The rest of the sanctuary to the north is missing. You cut off the north portion of the sanctuary.
Okay. So I'm not crazy for looking at this and thinking twice. Okay. But yeah, you can see that there's chairs and tables set up. There's a kitchen. This is where they would be doing fellowship. You see bathrooms. That's where, they'd use the bathroom. There's a storage facility. So these are just additions to the church. Again, that won't increase maximum seating capacity. And then we have some renderings. Now, these renderings are really just meant to give you somewhat of a visual, and it's more of a visual of the structure of the church itself. So we don't expect the landscaping to be accurate on renderings like this, but this does give us a good understanding of what kind of building materials will be used on the exterior. We have windows. Right there are the garbage carts. And we address the things like the ramps and things like that throughout the ordinance as well. So the building itself is 15 feet away from the property line. The ramps are a little bit closer, and oftentimes in planning, zoning, and building, if it is under 30 inches, if that's a concrete deck or a wooden deck or any kind of deck that's under 30 inches, we consider it like a 0 setback. Like you could pour rocks or you could plant grass to that. You can have concrete up to your property line. There's no setback on that. And at some point, someone somewhere along the way set the standard of 30 inches. If it's above that, then it can't encroach. But just to cover all bases, we did include that as part of the ordinance. So the motion options are available on the screen. I'm available for any questions, as well as the agents, and I believe some representatives from the church are here as well.
Thank you, Ms. Rydell. Any questions from the board for our town planner based on the presentation we've just seen? I've got a landscaping question while they're thinking. You mentioned that there's a mathematical equation to determine how much canopy coverage we need to have. Based on we had talked about the changes in the landscape requirement for basically landscape up against the building, but when it comes to trees and it being in the way of parking, exactly how many oak trees, let's say, would meet the need, would meet the requirement? Or palm trees? You said they're worth a certain amount of points. What's the shortage? Would you, whichever one of you is going to speak to that, would you take the podium and just state your name and association to this project for the record?
Yes, I have some information on that. Sorry guys, yes, I'm Vlad. I work for Polston Engineering as well, so I worked on this design as well.
Also Marvin Wolf,
So,
Polston Engineering.
yes, we called it out, how many trees and how many shrubs we need to have for this particular case. So, and if you look at this one, you can tell that you need to provide 1 tree and 7 shrubs for each 50 feet of length of the property line.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
The driveway coming into the property,
Yes, sir.
it has the terminology and the information on the landscape.
Okay.
So, just to elaborate on that a little bit more, I think, so these are the buffer yard requirements, which are great.
Yeah.
The canopy tree coverage requirements
That's what
are-
I'm asking about. I don't want the trees to get in the way of the parking, but I would love, for example, the reason why I'm asking, let me just get to the end of my whole point is there currently trees that line the property that shade the sidewalks right now?
No, right now,
And if
no
there-
trees are present.
If there's not, if we were to agree to the ordinance or the zoning change, could we potentially get the church to agree to get that canopy coverage, not in the parking areas? It doesn't need to be spread throughout the grass. I understand that because all of our parking's grass parking too, but that would be a great opportunity for the town to be able to enjoy a shaded walkway, or at least a partially shaded walkway in front of the church.
Okay, so currently, we are proposing canopy tree and shrubs along Tangerine and Interlake. We have not done the square footage requirement.
Okay?
We are not landscape architects. We work with Chad Clauser. He will
Yes,
be
sir.
doing the landscape irrigation plan for us when we do a final site development plan. But we do show canopy trees along with shrubs along both the west and the north property line.
Yeah, I saw that in the proposal. I just wanted to make sure that us agreeing to a zoning change did not eliminate the need for that. Because that was one of the requests, is that be changed because of the concern for parking. I think what I'm suggesting, go ahead.
Okay. So for the Highlands County, I'll give this as an example. They will allow overhang of your front bumper into a landscaped area. Because again, it's not always going to be there. We will be providing a barrier of some type, either, I think we can use either railroad logs or ties or an actual curb stop at that 18-foot mark that we're talking about. So we'll have a 2-foot overhang into that 7.6-foot buffer along the front.
Yes, sir.
So it will have enough room then for growth, root growth underneath the parking spaces and into the right-of-way if necessary.
Yes, sir. I mean, I think my point is I would certainly be inclined to grant the zoning change. I would like to do so with the amendment possibly that the church would agree to get some of that canopy coverage, not in their parking areas, but along the sidewalk. I'm not talking about the 7.6 feet of landscape, and I think that's fine. I mean, it can be dense, but I'm talking about this is a great opportunity to, in keeping with the town code, let's don't put trees all randomly around the property. Let's put them all big, oak trees or palm trees or whatever right along that sidewalk area as a part of the agreement. And I'm asking Dana, if we were to grant this zoning adjustment or make the recommendation to town council, would we need to do so with the amendment of having the required amount of canopy coverage, not dispersed throughout the property, but along Interlake Boulevard and possibly down Tangerine, just bordering the property there.
Yeah, so I think there is a middle ground to be had there because looking at the plan, it's only showing for the pavement sidewalk approximately 6,694 square feet. And so I'm going to consider that my vehicular use area for all intents and purposes right now. Yeah. And so if oak tree is 1,000 plus square feet of canopy tree coverage, we could make the request that the specific trees that are used in the landscaping buffers, if they could be oak trees. Would that make sense? And is that something you think you could agree to?
So, what do we have for the,
Do we put a specific number that
Yeah.
4 oak trees along Interlake and 2 along Tangerine? And is that how we would make?
One issue, potential issue, is that for an oak tree, I've got a laurel oak in my front yard that's probably got an 8-foot diameter base to it now. It's only about 30 years old. So it will fill out into your setback, your area here up front, and it might overrun it. It may be too big where some of the trees will grow into each other. That if you have very planned out stationing or positioning of the trees, and again, that's where we can talk to Chad and give him your comments or as far as the town's comments on how to lay it out specifically, so we don't have a whole lot of overlap, so that kills off the trees, and we have,
Yes, sir,
don't
absolutely.
have a huge base growing them.
Well, I'd want it to work.
Yeah,
I think
right.
I guess what I'm suggesting is I think we could allow for this, for the variation as it relates to the landscape buffer along the building, but still have room for still be in compliance with the canopy coverage on the property without impeding parking is my goal. Because I would want them to have their parking to free flow without that causing any issues. But it's also, it would, a great benefit to the town would be for those sidewalks to also be able to get some shade.
Now, you said it was 6,000 square feet roughly that we had?
Yes, about 67, 6,007.
So you're talking about, and they were about 1,000 square feet per oak tree?
Right, and we only need 50% coverage.
So we'd only need 3 oak trees, essentially.
Potentially.
That requirement.
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
talking about, go ahead and meet the overall square footage requirement.
For
but
shaded
along the
canopy
property
coverage.
lines.
Yes, sir.
Now, so we could actually do smaller accent-type trees, because again, the larger oak trees may help as far as nice big oak tree, but smaller accent trees could cover the same area without affecting as much area.
Yes, sir.
So at the base.
Yes, I guess,
So,
I'd love to hear from the church, because I'd love to just hear about their property and how excited they are about what it's going to be. I just wanted to ask about that landscaping thing and make sure that we didn't sweep too much into the variation or variance.
Do we want to ask that a minimum of 4 oak trees be planted on the property as part of their landscaping?
well,
I think,
Can we not be specific and just say shade trees? It could be an elm or something, because
Because
I
they-
understand your point. An oak tree is eventually maybe going to break the sidewalk of the town or get it, and so we come with something a little less.
and I'm recommending that the board just consider, I would recommend that the board consider, at least in this part of the conversation, granting the variance with the amendment that the landscaping variance, with the exception that the shade tree requirement would remain intact, whether that's crepe myrtles, oak trees, palm trees, it doesn't matter.
so the 50%
Yes,
of the
yes, sir.
impervious area, or of road surface area requirement be met.
Yes.
With the understanding it's not in the parking area, but along the border.
Correct. I wouldn't want to get in the way.
Correct. So this is another way I could rephrase this or think, okay, so there is something in the code that says, because the requirements are different. We have our canopy tree coverage requirements, and then we have our buffer yard requirements, right? And if I need to require 1,000 square feet of canopy tree coverage requirements, but I already have my landscape buffer on the side. What the code allows is that 50% of the tree coverage toward those trees that are already required for the buffer yard and not required for canopy tree coverage, 50% of that coverage can be used toward canopy tree coverage. So it's almost a little bit like double dipping, but at the same time, just making sure you're not providing too much in some ways. So could we say that the trees inside the buffer would be granted 100% credit toward meeting canopy tree coverage requirements? Whatever that would take? Or do we still want to keep it at 50% and have them plant more trees than the 50% that would usually be allotted toward canopy tree?
Do you do that the canopy coverage within the buffer can meet the requirement for the coverage on site?
So it can meet
Completely.
both entirely, but the
Meet
buffer
both
yard
entirely,
and canopy
yeah.
tree coverage requirements?
Yes. That way you have your tree coverage for the site, but you're not trying to just jam them all in there and.
Correct. No, I want it to be beautiful for the church. I want them to be proud of what it is. But this is the phase at which we get an opportunity to say, well, let's also benefit the town and have some shaded walkways along that edge. And so that would be my recommendation to this group as you consider making a motion one way or the other. Any other questions from this particular group while we have the engineers at the stand?
I just want to clarify something. So, like right now, we just said a minimum of 4 trees would fulfill the requirement, but on the plans, there's already 8 trees that are pseudo-planned, I'm assuming. I would prefer to have 8 rather than the minimum of 4.
Okay, but I think what she was saying was that before the minimum requirement was based on approximately 1,000 square feet of coverage. So if we eliminate calling them the oak tree and call them some other type of canopy tree, and each canopy tree has its own coverage that's allowable, that we still come up with approximately 3,000 to 4,000 square feet of coverage area based on whatever tree we put in.
At least, yeah, and the
Yes.
church may decide they want to beautify it more with more
Yes.
trees once they see it, but I think what I was trying to prevent is there being 0.
Right.
Because the
exactly.
concern was it'd mess up parking.
Well, again, if
Yeah.
you kind of put it towards stating that we need to have a minimum of the 50% of the impervious, traffic surface area, that way it does cover at least 3,000 to 3,500, and possibly even up to 4,000 square feet for trees, canopy area. So whether we do crepe myrtles, I'm not sure what crepe myrtles are allowable, but
They're
palm
allowed.
trees, there's a lot of different ones, but there's also mixtures, 1 oak tree and 5 or 6 crepe myrtles or something.
That'd be a fun decision for the church
Right.
to get to
Right.
decide. Let them decide how they want to beautify their property in meeting that requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, I like live oak trees, but I know you're talking about breaking up sidewalks. I get it. We'll just go ahead and put in a request for the CRA now that in about 12.5 years, we're going to need sidewalk replacement on Interlake because we
Careful
want pretty
now.
live oak trees out there.
I think they're outside of the
Yeah.
CRA boundaries. They might be out of luck there.
If there are no immediate questions from the board to the engineering group or town planner, I want to just, a representative from the church, just give us a quick picture of what this means to you guys and what you are hoping to accomplish through this, how you feel like it's going to serve your church and the community. It doesn't have to be long, but being that we are a local planning agency, how does this integrate into the goodness of our community?
Marcia Taylor from the, do you need my address?
You can use the church's address.
Okay. Interlake, Church of the Nazarene on Interlake. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking your time to listen to this, and thank you so much, Dana, for your hard work on this. I didn't realize you knew so much about us.
I learned.
But my thinking personally on the trees and the view, I was also thinking about breaking up the sidewalks with certain trees. I know that they would tend to do that. And it's where children go to school, to the middle school. So we wouldn't want that. But also the view of the sunset, if you've ever been in our church parking lot and see the sunset at night, it is, in the afternoon, it is so beautiful. I wouldn't want to block that.
Have you ever seen it through a live oak tree? A freshly manicured
I
live
was
oak?
trying to picture that. But I was also thinking of palm trees in Florida, and they're taller, and you can see the sunset through the palm trees. That's beautiful, too, to me. But that was just some of my thoughts about the parking and the trees.
Yeah, thank you. This is public hearing, so I will this is my open it up to the public moment. But certainly, one of the public comments, I'd love to hear from some church leadership about what this project means for your church and how you feel like it's going to be a benefit to the community.
Want me to answer that question? My name's Mark Lydecker. I'm the church board secretary. And answer Mr. Wood's question, probably, maybe, I don't know if anyone's been in our church, but we have a nice sanctuary, but the fellowship hall was very small. So when they constructed the church, it could maybe hold 30 to 40 people. That's the only room that we have for our fellowship and also our Sunday school. So Pastor Paul had a vision years ago about expanding that fellowship hall. And I kind of had the same vision. I'm a snowbird, so when I came down here, I kind of had the same vision. We need a place to fellowship. We need additional Sunday school space. We need additional, the pastor needs a larger office and the secretary needs a larger office. So that was really the basic plan for our church. And that was our vision. And we do, I want to thank everybody here for having this meeting and hopefully approve the zoning so we can get this thing built. We've been trying to do this for 5 or 6 years. And right now, with the help of Polston Engineering and some architects that we know, it's going to be a reality, and I really appreciate that. I guess I'm having trouble visualizing the oak trees, and when you mentioned Mr. Wood's canopy, exactly what do you mean by a canopy?
Just shade tree
So
type.
that's just a shade tree that's...
The shade tree style.
So there'll be a section in front of the church that'll be shaded, but then the section by the school will not be.
Well, that would be up to y'all.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any jurisdiction to tell you where to put the trees. I had just recommended that you put them along the sidewalks because it would be a benefit to the community to enjoy shaded walk in that area, particularly kids going to school. It might block a little sunset. Like that, exactly like that, just like that in the pictures. Yeah, that's the idea.
Instead of the
Okay.
palm trees, you'd have the oak trees, is what you're
Well,
saying?
whatever the church family would like to use. I like live oak trees, but, you know.
So that'll be on, is that on the right side of the...
The left side of the screen is interlaid. That's the north side of your property, on the left side.
Okay.
So we've just shown a smattering of different...
So it's just along Interlake, not along Tangerine.
That's
both.
what we showed on the sketch.
Whatever you decide, sir. The variance that was being requested would have eliminated the requirement for you to have to do that at all. What we were saying is let's grant the part of the variance about the 7.6 feet of buffer, but let's keep the shade tree coverage requirement and let you guys decide how you want to disperse that out amongst the property.
Okay.
That's essentially.
So along Tangerine, would that be located on between the sidewalk and the virgin dish?
It would be within your property, but we could put smaller trees, essentially. We would have to put the larger trees for your visual of the sunsets.
So you can't really put it in the ditch then?
No, we could put it on your property within the retention area.
Yeah, and we wouldn't decide that here. You guys get to decide that as a church leadership team. We're just deciding, I'm recommending that we decide to just require the shade tree coverage. You decide how you want to do it.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Pam Pinterest, 12373 Lost Lake Drive, Lake Placid. The setback, I guess the multi-use path that's going to Placid Lakes. Last year, the town bought a 30-foot right-of-way along Interlake for not only the central sewer lines that will be down the road, but also for a multi-use path. So you have this Collier to Polk Regional Trail, and that's not only within the state, but it's supposed to come through Lake Placid. So does their variance of 7.6 feet or whatever you're talking about, does that impact, is there still room for a 30-foot, the right-of-way? Because you'd hate for it to be all the way down to Lake June Point in that area coming from Placid Lakes. The whole thing is for the school children, having access up to the schools, and then it to narrow in there. But I just pulled while I was sitting here, Kevin McCarthy in August, a newspaper article talks about the whole plan to go down Interlake, Tangerine Avenue, to connect the parks and stuff. So does that account for it?
The multi-use path that you're specifically referring to is at the northwest corner, so it's cata-corner to this development. What could have resulted from this request, the only thing that could change if this request is not granted, is they could have been required to tear up their sidewalks and replace them with the 10-foot multi-use path. But that multi-use path wouldn't be connecting to any other multi-use path in the near future.
Will not be.
Correct, because the multi-use path that's proposed is across the street in Cata Corner.
Okay.
Let me see if I can.
But it's on the south side of Interlake is where it's proposed. I'm just thinking sewer and in the future, so it's not, it is on this one, but
No, that's
it's
the
a
right
bigger-
question. I appreciate you bringing
it's a
that up.
bigger picture.
Let's verify that, because if
Mr.
nothing
Chairman.
else, we'd want to make sure that we plant and prepare with that in mind, because that is
Because
likely
at one
coming.
time, the county was doing it on one side of Interlake, the town was trying to get a right-of-way on the other side, and then they're trying to coordinate and work together. I thought they ended up going on the south side.
I don't know if you can tell from this map, but on the northwest corner, so Cata Corner to this development, there's that green line that runs
Right.
like that thin strip, that thin little strip of land. That's the future trail.
Okay, so it's not going to,
Correct. It's on the north side of Interlake.
As far as I know, the force main will be on the south side.
right,
But the multi-use path will be on the north side.
you just need to look into that further. That was originally how it was slated, and then the town and the county are working together, and so that it doesn't impact one another. I think the town's trying to piggyback on the county funds for this multi-use path. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And then the only other question I had is on page 10 of this proposal, under the sanitary sewer and septic system. It talks about the property is currently served on an on-site wastewater treatment system. Central water is not available at this time. It says central water, but I think it should say central sewer.
Yes, thank you.
Right, but
That's-
I'm just saying technically, it has the wrong word in there, so I think, so I think that word needs to be central sewer.
Thank you.
Sanitary sewer is not available at this time. And then it talks about pursuant to Florida statute, and it goes on. The bigger concern I have is on the page where the town engineer wrote the letter about the capacity. And Dennis states, no sanitary sewer is available. They list the capacity and the permitted amount of central water, but not central sewer. So it almost makes it sound like the town doesn't have any extra capacity for central sewer, but we know that it does. So understand that they're not mandated to hook up currently to central sewer because the line is not there, and then they'd have a year if the line does go by it. But I guess I'm asking, is the town's position that there is no sanitary sewer available in the town limits. Is that the town's position?
I don't believe that was the intent of that letter. I think that the town engineer is new to this position, this role, and just probably didn't understand the exact language that was really probably better for that letter.
It's-
Just a couple of things that need to be verified.
Right. Thank you.
Would you make sure to look into those things as well? Because those are some important distinctions for the conversation.
Certainly.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, let me bring it back to the board. Any other comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, to clarify my recommendation earlier, I think what I'm recommending is that we move to recommend approval of this ordinance to town council with the, what would be a good legalese way to say that? With the
Canopy-
additional recommendation, with the provision of maintaining the canopy shade tree requirement at the discretion of the church and engineers of how they want to lay that out. That would be my recommended motion to some degree, but I think we also need to make a note for town council to give careful consideration to the future multi-use path that's going to be rolling through there and wastewater capacity concerns brought up by Ms. Ventress. Those potentially could be a matter of future concern, and I would not want that to end up being an expense on the church or the town, just because we just hadn't thought through all the layers, you know. That's not really a motion, but I'll wait to entertain one.
I'll make that motion if Eva got all of that.
Eva did not get all that.
How do you
I
want
got
it
it.
worded? You got it?
Did you get it?
Yeah,
wanna-
I mean, I don't have it verbatim, but
You
the
want to
motion,
state that back to us just for clarity?
well, I can try to compose one. So,
You want me to try?
I moved to forward hearing number LPTC 25.001 RZ, ordinance number 2025-01 to the town council with the recommendation of approval with changes as follows. First change being keep the canopy tree coverage requirement by meeting 100% of the requirement in the buffer yard, the required buffer yard. And continue coordination with staff regarding the multi-use path.
Future multi-use path and wastewater concerns, if there are any.
And wastewater capacity.
Is that your motion?
That's exactly what I said.
Well done.
I heard you say it.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. But with the wastewater capacity, also the wastewater infrastructure. Because the multi-use path can be across the street, and the infrastructure is going to come on that side of the street.
I'm sorry, say that again?
They got a buried pipe in the ground.
Yes. Okay, as in terms of where the pipe would go, in relation to the multi-use path.
I don't want it messing up my live oak trees.
We just want to verify that this is not going to have to be torn up in the future
Absolutely.
for a multi-use path, sewer, whatever. And also that the capacity, the wording in this, that the capacity is not an issue also,
Okay.
I think. Right, Donald?
Is that correct, Mr.
Yeah,
Clarke?
the capacity is one issue.
Yeah, but you want,
The infrastructure is
they're going to
another
put a
issue.
line in the ground somewhere. We want.
I understand.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none. Eva, please call the roll.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
Donald Clarke,
Yes.
Dustin Woods,
Yes.
Gary Freeman,
Yes.
Alex Ramos.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Church of Nazarene, for being here and being part of this, and Polston as well. We have one more item of business tonight. Well, technically two, but it's really one discussion as it relates to our, thank you all for coming and being part of this tonight. You certainly don't have to hang around for this if you don't want to. I do want to say for the record, though, I heard talk as y'all were making your presentation, and Dana was presenting it, that you don't foresee it causing any traffic issues or any capacity issues. I hope it does. I hope it causes a ton.
Hey!
I hope y'all experience so much growth that we've got to solve more problems. So enjoy your facility. All right? This is kind of an annual formality that we do, gentlemen, to take a look at the 5-year capital improvement plan and the 10-year capital improvement plan. We're an extra set of eyes that get to have a look at that. I certainly would be interested to hear if you have any comment on this, Ms. Fentress, while you're here. But let me turn this over to Dana just for make sure we get what she needs out of this.
Thank you. So then I'll be quick. What you have before you, gentlemen, again, my name is Dana Riddell, Town Planner for the record. This is ordinance number 2025-02, an ordinance of the Town of Lake Placid, Florida, modifying the 5-year capital improvement schedule of the Town of Lake Placid 2030 Comprehensive Plan, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date. So what this plan does is we take the items that were budgeted this past year, we take them out of the budget, we put them into a plan so that we know exactly what the capital improvements are for the next 5 years. So this particular ordinance would modify the 5-year capital improvement schedule from the one we had last year to a new one. That's why you'll see a portion or 2 pages struck through. That's last year's plan this year. This year's plan is underlined. This is located within the capital improvements element of the town's comprehensive plan, but it is not considered a comprehensive plan amendment per Florida statute. The reason we do this is to satisfy Florida statute requirements for the annual review of the capital improvement schedule, and it identifies funding, timing, and priority for the listed projects and ensures our adopted levels of services are achieved and maintained. And I read the caption already. This plan also adopts by reference the Highlands County School District 5-year work plan. Now, we don't have it as part of our packets this time. Last year, they were behind by about 4 or 5 months. We ended up moving forward anyway. This time, they're behind by about 1 month, and before this gets voted on by Town Council, the school board 5-year capital improvement plan will be included with their package for them to see. But unless they're actually showing a need for a new school or new facilities in Lake Placid, and we plan on providing it with the land that we don't particularly have unless they want to build a school right back here or something, there would be very little or no comment from us. So I do have a recommended motion on the screen.
I brought this up last year, but I'm assuming this is the right forum to make the recommendation, but I really would like for the town to start making decisions and provisions to tie into the natural gas on 70. Again, I'm not sure if, I'm assuming this is the right platform, this document, to start dreaming that dream. I mean, I don't even care if they put a 0 in there next to it. I would like to have a line item so we're thinking about it, because with some of the development we have coming in, even with the potential housing development coming in, it's going to attract some good business potentials, and natural gas can be a heck of a selling point. Fiber optic internet's going to be a heck of a selling point. So, like I said, I recognize budgeting for it would mean having to somehow garner the funds from the current populace, but gosh, I mean, even if the game plan was to just seek out grants for it, I mean, I think those are going to be 2 mission-critical things for our 5-year plan. Because I think in 5 years, especially with that golf course complex coming in, I think in 5 years, some pretty significant business tire kickers and be sniffing around. And, you know, we've got Duke Readiness Survey that's kind of wooing him in. If we also had natural gas and fiber optics and things of that nature, I think that'd be, and a new, you know, housing, somewhere to live. We've got a lot of things moving that way, but I think that would be I would recommend that we have this in our 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever.
So to bounce off that thought, our 5-year plan, which is our capital improvement schedule, are the things that are feasible and we know will happen. But our 10-year plan, the years 5 through 10, do not have to be feasible. Or, you know, more kind of along the lines of what you're saying as to something we want to aim toward and make sure we start organizing for and have goals in that area. So I think that might be a great addition on our next agenda item, which
Okay.
will be the resolution for the 10-year capital financial strategy.
Okay.
Can we put it at year 6?
Sure.
Yeah, at year 6, right?
You could put it in year 6. Now, the reason that we didn't move forward with that was because the only way to qualify for grant funding is to have actual construction plans or an end user. So we weren't able to pursue any grants because we didn't have anyone lined up.
And would that construction plan or end user have to land somewhere around Ramada Inn to where it would have to kind of draw it into town? Or could it be someone on north side of town and so we run it all the way up here? Could be anywhere.
Yeah, well, we don't want to, the town of Lake Placid wouldn't benefit from it being down by Ramada Inn because it's not in our town limits, but I think the goal would have been to bring it from the 70 area up to the new Project Crave area. And everyone really wanted to serve that particular area with natural gas.
Okay.
So I know that was a big thing.
Well, perhaps we save that for the next, because we have to make 2 votes. We have to vote on, or make a recommendation on 5-year and on 10-year. So I'll wait to entertain a motion related to 5-year. Ms. Fentress, would you like to make public comment on 5-year? Please.
Since you're here.
A wealth of wisdom.
Pam Fentress. Let's see. You're correct. Last year, the school board delayed and didn't have the information at hand. They are proposing 2 $8 million wings for new construction. One will be at Lake Country Elementary. The other one's at Woodlawn, I think. You need the budget, or you need that information. You also need to look at the enrollment figures. Like in 2027-28, they project the enrollment at the Lake Placid Elementary and middle schools to be at 60%. So in the bigger picture, does the school board need the $8 million wing? That's not something for y'all to decide, but it does play into it, and you need those figures.
Ms. Fentress, is 60% an increase or a decrease?
Decrease projected over the next 5 and 10 years. Total enrollment's going to be down. It was over 12,000. It'll be about 10,500. There's a steady downward trajectory.
I think those school board figures are usually a part of this packet as well, right?
They are, and that's what
Usually.
you need to look at. I went on the website, the school board's website. They didn't have the 2024-25, but they had the 2023-24.
Yeah, all right.
And that's what I'm pulling the figures from. So, but it happened to you last year. I understand you're saying it was 4 months delayed, but every year it's always delayed. And I see it at the county commission meetings also, where they don't have that information either. But it's critical because you also have the impact fee study that the county is doing currently that'll be done in a year. So, I mean, that's going to be another facet into your planning. I'm trying to stay on track with your 5-year and your motion y'all are doing, but going back to your natural gas line, last year this committee did vote to send a resolution or an ordinance or suggestion to town council and to request that during the legislative delegation, which is going to be Wednesday of this week, that the town request that for that Duke Energy site readiness area for, town hall bringing it up. I think that's extremely important if you're looking at economics and growth or stability within the town. So I don't recall the town council giving much traction on it when y'all presented it and requested, but I still think you just keep on. If that's something that's important to this committee, I say you recommend it again, or you remind them.
What would be the appropriate method to do that? Just a written note and email it to Eva?
I'm honestly not sure. I don't know if you want to come in person. I remember last time, specifically Ray Royce, we had a conversation with town council. I don't remember if I brought a resolution or, what I brought forward, but that council person at that time stated that it would not be what they would be requesting. That wouldn't be what they would be requesting for their legislative. We did make some really massive requests last year for legislative grants and approvals, and I think, again, just because there wasn't an end user or anyone that actually was in mind, there was no request made.
And you're right, that's correct, that's what town council said, but also now you have the Amazon distribution center. You have stuff starting to open up. So you can always suggest it, and then they can always not next year, but
Who would be our liaison at that particular meeting?
Dustin Woods, no.
Well, Dustin Woods is, I'm supposed to be at that meeting. I'm actually supposed to do the opening invocation. I get invited to do those kind of
stick
things a
around.
lot. But I'm going to have my little baby, and I won't be able to make it.
I mean, why couldn't this board make a recommendation for the town administrator to bring up staff, just say, hey, this board's, let Charlotte bring it up?
Does that work?
Yeah, Charlotte can do it, I can do it. Charlotte has been doing a really great job, so if we want to go ahead and request that the town administrator have a discussion with town council regarding that.
Well, it sounds like we're down to the wire. It'd have to be something that's ready to fire on Wednesday at the
Legislative
legislative
delegation.
review.
I
Not
don't
happening?
think we'd have enough time to prepare that request this year. So it would really be for future years. It would be you continuing to get it on the radar, kind of as Pam mentioned, is just keep knocking.
Yeah, I mean, and shame on me for not bringing it up before we're actually looking at the paper.
I'm wondering, why did last year it fell at such a different time?
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
on time.
Sir,
can I make a comment?
please.
We had, I was working for Pierce Utilities when the company, they're an actual company, the Florida Gas Transmission is a big giant corporation, and they put that line across Florida for situations like this. And the reason they did it, because they had the money, and they want people to hook up to their gas line. But when they do that, it's developer-driven. And that's the key here. It's developer-driven, and that development that you're talking about can drive this.
They would be the ones to advocate.
Right. But our utility had natural gas. We had natural gas all over Fort Pierce. It was in one of my departments that I had. But that was done years and years ago, but we've got to have some kind of a vision. It'll be through the utility department is where it would be. It would fall under there. So I'm just letting you know.
We a day late and $1 short for this year, is this what I'm hearing? And I
Well,
guess,
it's the same with water. Like, if you go to Sarasota now, you'll see this project when you go down Fruitville Road, and you'll see on the right this water tower, water tank, ground storage tank. Well, that tank was for that development that's there right now, and they ran that water line. The development paid for that water line to get out there. It's probably 8-9 miles long to get out there. And and you can imagine how much that tank cost to build. That was funded by that developer there. Well, the same thing happens with gas.
I would imagine.
Same
I
type of
understand.
thing.
Yeah, I understand the principle.
It's a big thing.
And
Okay.
I would agree with that normally, but that could be something that if the town wanted to pursue economic viability or something, and is that an incentive type thing, that we have a business park and, that has central sewers, has central water, has, natural gas. Just a Just a thought.
Thank you,
And then,
Ms.
and the other thing is, in this 5-year plan, the town bought the old Boy Scouts building on Dow Hall, and for like $300-something thousand. And there's been discussions at some town council meetings about refurbishing it and refurbishing that park or making it a pavilion, and you can rent out a building. They don't have a set game plan. But I would think if we still own the building and you're gonna do something in the next 5 years, wouldn't you need to put that in your 5-year capital improvements plan?
It's in the CRA.
It's in the CRA.
CRA. That's why you don't see it in this capital improvement plan. It's in
Okay.
the CRA budget.
If something's on the CRA, it can't have been on the town's budget for 3 years prior before it's in the CRA budget.
Did not know that.
Learn, this is a sharp bunch. That's good.
And then so the Lake Placid Fire Station that they've been working with the county for like 7 years trying to get, is that, and I know we originally had COVID or federal funding for the station, and then that was given away, and they're still trying to find the land. Is that something you put in a 5 or 10-year plan? No.
Yes, it's in here.
The fire station is?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I saw the police station, fire station, okay. So until we actually know where the money's coming from or where we're building it or what contribution we're making, I think it would be best fit in the 10-year plan. But at this time, I'm not necessarily sure what the town's contribution will be to that. But there still might be some value in adding it with $0. Yeah.
Well, I think originally it was behind Publix, behind Bert's office there, but they didn't want that. That was gonna be the town's contribution, but they didn't want it.
Yeah, and then there was a purchase that recently fell through by the high school. That didn't work out. And then,
Advent, it started with the Advent Hospital donated land, but then they had environmental, or they had sand skinks, and then Haas Compton had donated land in that 3 years period, and there's Bert's, and then it's just something to put on a piece of paper.
Where would that belong in 10-year recommendation?
fire station, yes, somewhere under the 10 years.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back around to that when we get to 10-year. As it relates to 5-year, any other comments, recommendations, questions concerning the 5-year?
Mr. Chairman, do you still want to put something about gas? Because if you can't just put it there. I'm thinking for someone to get in touch with Florida Gas Transmission and get them involved and go to some of their meetings. And they usually meet every quarter, as I remember.
It sounds like, if I'm hearing correctly, Ms. Rydell said the most appropriate avenue to make that recommendation is when we close this hearing on 5 years and we talk about 10 years, to make it on that one. That's more of the let's dream and plan budget. 5 years more of the we need to buy a truck budget, sounds like.
Right.
If I'm reading this right.
Correct.
Okay. With that said, any recommendations on the,
I don't want to beat the dead horse, but, I mean, if they're digging all this pipe now, wouldn't it be cheaper to throw the pipe in the ground while it's dug up instead of going back in later to put
is it currently being ran?
Which pipe?
I mean, like, they were doing sewer lines right now, so, I mean, wouldn't it be cheaper to throw it in the ground now than it is to go back in afterwards and do it? I mean, I'm just,
Are we talking about sewer now?
well, I'm talking about the natural gas
The
lines.
natural gas line, while the ground's
Yeah.
opened up.
Because the provider is the key,
Yeah.
and that's Florida Gas Transmission.
I just, you know, I understand that this is a 10-year thought, but if there's a way to mitigate the cost of it now, I mean, there's always a chance of taking action. Or, I mean, I don't know.
Well,
It is
I
the
mean-
government, they're,
That's true, but the reason I brought that up is because they're the ones with the money, Florida Gas Transmission. They've got to get in on it, is what I'm saying. Somehow they've got to get involved.
You seem to be the guy that knows the
Oh.
way
Well,
to go.
I used to work in it. It was in our department,
Yeah,
so.
man.
But what I'm saying is,
Yeah,
that was
but
brought up,
perhaps
I
we
think,
need a liaison.
well, it's more involved than that. It's actually people on staff in the utility department, that's why I brought it up. Going to these meetings, they're
Gary, let
getting
me-
paid. In other words, they're employees.
As you,
I used to go to these meetings. I used to go to them, you know. like-
in the utility meeting tomorrow,
Yeah, with practice tomorrow at 1.
Gary, do you have the latitude in your schedule to attend the utilities meeting tomorrow on our behalf,
Where's it at?
right here, and rehash this
this
desire
your
of
The
ours?
regional utility, that's the region, the town's regional.
Oh,
utility.
oh, that one, yeah. No, I have another meeting already scheduled. It's been scheduled at 1 o'clock.
Would
But
you-
the point is, the long term, though, Mr. Chairman, that wouldn't do much. But I think Dana knows what I'm talking about, because Dana's going to be working on the, what is it, 25-year long-range plan that you were talking to me about?
Well, we have a master plan, and at the same time, in the next couple years, we will be updating our 30-year comprehensive plan. But
Right.
yeah, the master plan, and Gary and I have had a lot of discussions about this, where the master plan, and I don't know if this is the direction we're really going with the one that we just purchased, but there should be an element of utilities and where we want utilities to grow and the overlap, just like the multi-use path that's coming down Interlake. And my understanding is that part of the reason that was purchased was because we were going to be running our sewer in the same area, and we wanted a certain amount of autonomy to be able to disturb our lands instead of the county being able to disturb our pipes and asking us to move them and things like that. So, and then we have the discussion later on today, well, maybe it's really on the south side, and now we purchased a whole path on the north side when we're going to open up the ground on the south side anyway. So it's like that overlap of what we all need to plan at the same time. The paths need to have a plan so that we could plan for utilities, so we could plan for all these other things. And so, yes, then we would have an idea of, okay, well, we're opening up the ground to fulfill this plan in 3 years. Maybe we could plan that at the same time. Now the ground being open doesn't really matter too much, because it would take 6 months to a year, maybe even, to find the right grants and apply for them and get them and things like that. So, the first step is getting it as part of the game plan, getting everyone to agree that they want it, that it should be part of the plan. Second step is determining when, how hard we're going to chase it, how fast we're going to chase it. And I think third step is really just how, if we can't get any funding at all, then we just can't do it.
Well, I just mentioned it one more time, because that's I believe, as I remember, that's a 36-inch main coming across Florida. That thing has got 3,000, almost 4,000 pounds of pressure in it. And it's no, simple thing. We're talking about a big, giant company that does this. And, go ahead.
Do you know the maintenance requirements if the line gets run all the way down here and we don't have an end user, what would the town be responsible for in terms of maintenance of that pipe?
The town couldn't afford it.
We can't afford to maintain
It has
the
to be
pipe?
developer-driven, but that doesn't mean that we can't get involved with what's going on with Florida Gas Transmission, is what I'm saying.
I see.
You know what I'm saying?
Would you put
Because-
maybe some thoughts together to recommend to this board at a meeting as we get into the new year about how we could do our part to approach this well? Light the right fires where they need to go, attend the right things we need to attend, so we kind of have a plan of action of how we can at least advocate for that to come into be.
Okay.
Because, we can't really take action here, is what I'm hearing, other than make a recommendation on paper that may or may not even be looked at.
Sure.
But if you would put together kind of a comprehensive thought for us, I do think it's something worth pursuing, and this is part of our, as a local planning agency, we probably need to be, we've discussed in the past, we need to be less reactive anyway and start getting out in front of the town. This would fall right in line with the things that we need to be doing anyway.
Well, if we're gonna make a recommendation to council to pursue it, we can make a recommendation to Kevin to see how knowledgeable he is in it. That's what he does. Utilities, if it falls under utilities, that's what he
You
does.
talking about Kevin, did you say? Oh, yeah, he knows about natural gas.
Right, so
We've
when
talked
we say
about that. Remember,
Kevin,
we talked to him about that.
Our recommendation is staff get okay through council and pursue what you need to.
How about this? If, I think we've kind of acknowledged we just can't catch it this year, probably just due to where we're at with timing. But next month, I can see who's available, see if Kevin's available to come speak to us about what it would take. And I could also see if our girls in economic development are available, because they're the ones who first of all, put together the Duke Site Readiness Program. They're aware of the needs of that site, and then they would also be aware of maybe funding mechanisms or grant mechanisms that we might be able to pursue. So I could ask for both of those entities to come and give us a talk. And then that could kind of serve as some of our educational background, so we have a basis of what we really want to request from town council.
Let's start there.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. EDC.
But Kevin would be the man.
Yeah, let's get him in here.
Exactly. And we started to talk about it, but he was kind of negative on it that day. We talked to him about it.
Yeah.
But we did mention it to him. That was like 2 years ago, when you first
Kevin
came.
has a past in propane, so he knows
Yeah, that's
a
a
lot
whole,
about
propane
gas and-
is a whole different story.
Okay.
But it's fine. I mean, if you want to go propane, then you go propane. And that's simple, because
Right.
we've got access to do that here. They can even run, and that's in Sebring.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
that's a gas that's used, in containers.
Well,
And
maybe
it's not like natural gas.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's a matter of me finding the most qualified person to be able to come speak to us, based on who's available in our
Thank you,
pool
Dana.
here.
Let's bring this back to the board for a motion on the 5-year proposal.
I'll motion to go, do it.
Go ahead and read that.
It's good.
Gary, would you just read that off the
that right
screen
there
for the
for me.
record there?
Okay, recommendation to move, well, I recommend to move to recommend to the council to adopt ordinance number 2025-02, modifying the 5-year capital improvement schedule of the town of Lake Placid, 2030 comprehensive plan, and forward the adopting ordinance to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for notification.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Eva, please call the roll.
Gary Freeman,
Yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
Dustin Woods,
Yes.
Donald Clarke,
Yes.
Alex Ramos.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. And now to the 10-year capital improvement plan. Other than what we've already discussed, is there any additional commentary that needs to be brought to mind, brought to the table for conversation related to 10-year? Ms. Rydell?
Nothing that really needs to be, everything is, there's no changes, and everything is as it's reflected on these spreadsheets.
Any questions or comments from the board? Just wait to entertain a motion.
On this motion, not to get us down a rabbit hole again, but if we wanted to get it included, the natural gas, on this plan, and kind of bring it to town council's attention, we could add it in that 6 to 10 year area.
I would like to certainly add that in to put it on the radar, as well as fiber optics,
Fiber optics.
natural gas and fiber optics. If
So a potential motion might be a resolution of the town of Lake Placid, It would be moved to recommend to the town council to adopt updates to the 10-year capital financial strategy of the town of Lake Placid 2030 comprehensive plan, technical support document by resolution 2025-02 with changes as follows, that fiber optics and natural gas be added as line items 6 years from now. Let me find out what year that is, hold on.
I would just say add it to the 10-year capital financial strategy.
There you go.
Yeah, we don't have to put a time on it. Let's go ahead and put it on there today,
Okay.
just knowing that it's not a part of the 5-year.
That's my motion.
Love it.
So you had kind of read it into the record there. We just, are you embracing Dana's motion with the amendments of fiber optics and natural gas to be put on there as soon as possible?
ASAP.
All right, that's the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eva, please call the roll.
Was it Donald that did the first?
Yeah.
Donald Clarke,
Yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
Dustin Woods,
Yes.
Gary Freeman,
Yes.
Alex Ramos.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Ms. Fentress, for coming to be a part of tonight's discussion. If there's no other business for the good of the group. Oh, yes, Ms. Fentress just reached out to someone. Ray. Is the multi-use path of Placid Lakes bridge on the north or south of Interlake? Because we wanted to be cautious about this easement next to Nazarene. The town, and Ray's response was the town bought ROW, right-of-way, on the north side of Interlake from Tangerine to Catfish, and on the north side of Catfish most of the way to Placid Lakes.
So it is all on the north side.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I-
yeah.
just to add to that, I think what it is the county had already planned on putting a regular sidewalk on the south side. We were trying to tell them to take pause on that
Yep.
and take the funding for that.
Just do it on the north.
Towards the multi-use on the north side.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So that's kind of where that conversation, but my understanding is the county's gonna do it on the south side. They're not going to.
On the south?
Yeah, they're doing a regular
Oh, regular
sidewalk,
sidewalk. Oh, I got you.
Not as a part of the multi-use.
not as part of the
Yeah.
multi-use.
No, and Kevin worked very,
Yes.
very hard to try to get them to switch their funding on what we were already working on, and nope, can't be stopped.
Well, thank you for that information, and thank you for the quick research, because that at least settled part of our discussion for the Nazarene Church. Thank you guys for being here tonight. If there's no other business, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Totally forgot.
6:57.